Welcome to Well Good Movies, the podcast for film fans by film fans. Every episode we look at films old and new to choose what should be preserved for all time in our movie vault. With lively topics, big questions and crazy challenges to entertain us and our guests, we always look to have fun by giving you the topics worth discussing and the movies worth watching. Even if there are some duds along the way. But don't just take my word for it, here's a preview of what to expect in today's episode.
It's just like they never really actually show you him kind of as the moral compass to Charlie. They kind of show him as this guy who's just like, yeah, why not? You know, he's the guy in the fizzy lifting drinks room who's just like, let's drink it. And I'm like, what? It's like, you're supposed to be the adult.
We need this as the prequel. Young, shady Grandpa Joe.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Are you not entertained? I am your father. Wait! Here's Johnny. I'll be back.
It's not the car, it's a silly movie boy.
Well, good movies.
Hello and welcome to Well Good Movies, or should I say, greetings to you, the lucky finder of this golden ticket. From Mr. Willy Wonka, I shake you warmly by the hand. Tremendous things are in store for you. Many wonderful surprises await you. In your wildest dreams, you could not imagine that such things could happen to you. Just wait and see. The day I have chosen for the visit is the first day in the month of February. You must come to the factory gates at 10 o'clock sharp. Don't be late. Willy Wonka. Or in this case, we are discussing Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory on its anniversary. It's celebrating 50 years since it came out back in 1971. So I am your guide today, or also host, David Osger, and I am joined by my co-host. He is an enigma. He's a very odd fellow, as there's no earthly way of knowing which direction he is going. It's Craig McDonald. Hello, Craig.
What are you talking about?
I just wanted some reason to get that in there. I was tempted to do the entire thing, and I kind of was like practicing beforehand, but I was like, I'm going to save this. I kind of like maybe want to see how our guests would maybe do it, but I did quite enjoy just spouting the madness, but I was like, no, we'll save the madness until later.
All I can say is you're going to like what I've got planned. I'd have in no way, as usual, told you about.
Oh, joys. Well, that's what I was thinking. I was like, well, no, and Craig, there's some madness gonna follow, so this seems apt. But yes, joining us today with their golden tickets. Don't worry, they're not as hideous people as in the book. I didn't want to.
For a split second, I thought you were going to say they're not as hideous as Craig. Don't worry.
No. I was like, of all characters, you don't want to be comparing like guests and fellow co-hosts to Dahl characters, because there's going to be a lot of offense made there, but Craig, like he made that, I didn't say that. So yeah, joining us is our good friend Shaun Thomas, who is a musician and actor. It's been quite a while since we've seen him. He of course joined us many years ago, it feels like now, when we were talking about Star Wars and Joker. Kyle, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? I'm pretty elusive. I tried to take a golden egg from a goose and was thrown down a trash compactor.
You just wanted it there and then.
I wanted it now.
And talking of madness, last time you were on, obviously you got the joy of me and Craig reenacting Anakin and Obi-Wan. Since then now, I've become a hobo on a desert planet, and Craig has become a Dark Lord of the Sith operating a Death Star.
You failed to mention that he also owns like a stormtrooper candy factory. We're keeping everything in theme.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to check, is that a candy factory for stormtroopers, or a candy factory making candy out of stormtroopers?
Well, keeping with how Mr. Wonka would take that factory, diversion.
Cool.
I just imagining like Darth Vader just dancing around with a cane singing the Candyman now.
Oh, that's something I want to see.
So Kyle, what have you been up to? Just give us a little update on your creative endeavors and what films you've been obsessing over lately. I'm sure there's some mad stuff in there.
So I've recently been cast in a original theatre production called Acres of Longing, which we're hoping to get on stage by November. Fingers crossed. That's really interesting. Music-wise, I'm doing vocals for the band Crypt Rot. I'm sure I might have mentioned it either here or somewhere else. It's out there. If you like death metal, that is.
And yes, of course, and you said you once played Willy Wonka, so very apt that you're on this episode today as well.
Yeah, that was a fun time. It's going back a little while ago, but I'm still bitter to the point where they stole pure imagination from me and turned it into a chorus number and not a solo performance. I will hold that to my grave. And if anyone, by any chance who knows me, was there or was in that cast, I'm still bitter and I'm still coming for you. I know where you live.
Just idle threats on the podcast. Okay, cool. Moving swiftly on. So we are also joined by a newcomer to the show. They are a film fan and self-proclaimed Film Society member who only goes for the quizzes. It is Liv MacKender. Hello, Liv.
Hello, yeah. Well, you know what? I was thinking before, you said you didn't want to compare us to, like, any Roald Dahl characters or anything like that. But while you've been chatting away, I've been thinking in the back of my mind, you probably should, because I'm really starting to identify with the bad giants in the BFG who just sleep and eat.
I was thinking whether you were going to... Because there are obviously good characters, you know, in terms of, like, Matilda and those kind of characters, but no, yeah... giants, if you want. A lot of people do. There's like those defensive like characters like Violet out there as well, isn't there? Which people are just like, yeah, this kid should have won the factory and all that kind of stuff. So you could go down that route as well if you wanted to. Like she's chasing her dreams. So Liv, tell us a bit about yourself. What are some of your favorite films? What is your jam when it comes to movies?
Okay, yeah. Well, to be honest, I think if anyone's going to be described as liking a bit of anything, it's me. And you can tell that by the fact that my favourite films are Whiplash, Rear Window, and Pitch Perfect, which don't really seem along the same theme. But yeah, no, lately because of lockdown ending, I've gone through a bit of a film phase over the summer again. I've got a movie subscription and an Odeon Limitless subscription, so I've been watching films every single day. Fortnight ago, I watched Palm Springs 6 times in 2 weeks. So, yeah, I'm going down a bit of a film spiral at the moment. It's getting quite chaotic, yeah.
Also, Liv, remind me, what was that film you really wanted to watch with me in the winter?
Yes! The Deluge! The greatest film of all time. I don't know that. I've never seen it, but apparently it's got the most accurate swordplay of any historic film ever. It's 6 hours long and about a war in Poland.
Oh, wow. That sounds like the kind of thing like Christopher Lee would be into or something. He was always into sword fighting and that kind of stuff. Sounds like something he would respect.
We are the music makers. And we are the dreamers of dreams.
How did you like the chocolate factory, Charlie?
I think it's the most wonderful place in the whole world.
All aboard, everybody.
So shines a good deed in a weary world.
This is kind of strange.
Yes, but it's fun. Charlie, don't forget what happened to the man who suddenly got everything he always wanted.
What happened?
He lived happily ever after.
Yeah, we thought it was a perfect time to talk about this famous film, which has become infamous amongst film fans, fans of Gene Wilder, music fans as well. Many of the songs from this film have become infamous, being used in advertising campaigns, other movies as well. And this film, like others which we've mentioned in the past, has become a goldmine for just parody, memes. There's the meme game with this film is very strong, especially as even with Gene Wilder there as Willy Wonka with the oh really sort of one.
Yeah, I was going to say, wasn't that like an OG meme? The oh really Willy Wonka.
We're going back to the classics, the history of memes. So yeah, this film is celebrating its 50th anniversary. In celebration, it's got a 4K release coming out. And of course, this film, mainly got a lot of its infamy for the nostalgia that people have for it from watching it on television. It wasn't actually a big success when it first got released, which was back in 1971 in the US. It was the 30th of June that it first came out. The director is Mel Stewart. Roald Dahl is credited with writing the screenplay, but it was sort of changed by someone else, much to his dismay. And it stars Gene Wilder, Jack Albertson, and Peter Ostrom in our sort of lead roles. Peter playing Charlie, and then you got a whole slew of other characters and actors, of course, all playing the many children who go into the factory and their parents. We thought this was a great chance to talk about the adaptations of Roald Dahl and specifically this film because, as we mentioned, it's become infamous for so many elements. So first off, I just wanted to talk to you guys about your history just with Roald Dahl in general, because I think that that's quite important when you're talking about his adaptations, is that unlike maybe a lot of other authors, people might be familiar with one certain book or one certain story, or their adaptations haven't been that well received and they've kind of gone under the radar. But Roald Dahl has had quite a sort of, mix. A lot of people love some of the adaptations. They might not be adaptations that he personally liked himself. But as an author, he's become this big name just in himself and his collection of works. There's so many stories that he has that are all famous. So Kyle, what's your sort of history with Dahl?
Well, I remember this is going to shoot me in the foot straight off if I get it wrong, but I'm about 85% sure the Twits is Roald Dahl.
Yes,
I thought so. Yeah, that was one I remember reading really early on in my lifespan, as well as growing up on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think a lot of people can agree with like that's one of the first instances of literature that they end up being exposed to. And I think for a lot of people, the problem lies in that if you grow up reading it and you have such a clear vision in your head of how these things are to you, that it's almost impossible to really hammer home a really good adaptation. I think it's the problem some people have with Star Wars. I know that's going off topic, but it always means something different to everyone else.
Yeah, no, it always links back to Star Wars, I find, so many times when you're talking about film, because it's such a big fan base, it's such a big franchise, and like you said, there's so many elements to it. It kind of is testing ground for how people react to film and that kind of stuff. And yeah, funnily enough, I think recently one of the writers who's working on The Acolyte, which is one of the Disney Plus series, they were talking about they're incorporating politics into the story possibly, and people were like, oh, why are you doing that? That's not part of Star Wars. And she was like, well, if you know George Lucas and you understand the story, that's always been a part of it. So that very much links into understanding your authors, understanding your creators. And I think that's what's important when you're talking about Roald Dahl, for instance. And I'm glad you brought up the Twits, because to me, that's synonymous with Dahl, what he is as an author. And I think it makes sense to the kind of films and stories I kind of liked when I was younger and then become a teenager, because it's such a wacky, weird story. And I think it wouldn't be the same if you didn't have the illustrations by Quentin Blake, etc.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. With the Twits, if you were to almost try and do that live action, I feel there'd be a large part of people going, there's a lot of indication towards domestic abuse and stuff, and it's well, it's supposed to be more whimsical than that, but the implication is easily drawn, I suppose.
Yeah, weirdly, I there's a theatre company in Cardiff called the Sherman Theatre, and when I was younger in school, they always used to do Dahl adaptations, when the school takes you on a theatre visit once a year around Christmas. And there was a few years in which they continuously did Dahl adaptations. One of them was the Twits, so it was weird seeing that brought to life on a stage.
I wish I'd caught that.
Yeah, and I think they did James and the Giant Peach another year as well. So yeah, but then like you said, when you look at a lot of the films that they've made, it's funny how the creator's style has to be taken into account there. So something like Fantastic Mr. Fox, it's not so much a Dahl film or a story as much as a Wes Anderson kind of film, which is kind of similar with the Tim Burton Charlie and Chocolate Factory. That's kind of very much a Tim Burton kind of film. And I think it's just because Dahl has such a style and sort of aesthetic in himself that it's hard to really adapt that yourself without going, okay, well, I'm going to do this with my style as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think like a large portion is like, if you've got someone that's grown up on Dahl and wants to adapt, like, I'm sure like they've got their own interpretation. As soon as you give anything to a creative, there's always going to be their take on it and their influence on it. So like, it's never going to meet the author's expectations, the filmmaker's expectations, the audience's expectations. Like, it's an amalgamation, but I suppose that's why like cinema's as magical as it is, because it's such a unique experience to everyone that sees it.
Yeah, definitely. Liv, what about for yourself? What's your experience with Dahl and possibly the adaptations? What's your take on that?
See, this is actually something that quite surprised me, to be honest, because as a child back in the school days, everyone always had this factionalization of whether you were a Roald Dahl supporter or a Michael Morpurgo supporter. It's worse than LFC versus Everton. It was rife, it was, back in the school days. And I've always thought that I was one of those snobby little children who fell on the Michael Morpurgo side. I've been looking back at this, and in hindsight, I realised I owned every single Roald Dahl audiobook and every single physical book there was. I watched The Witches on video, the good adaptation, not the terrible recent one, like every other weekend. I can remember most of the plot, but I don't know, other than the fact that Warhorse was in France at one point, a single thing about the Morpurgo books, so I've evidently got my perception of what I liked as a child very wrong at some point. But, yeah, no, I don't know what it is about Roald Dahl books generally. There's part of me doesn't want to like them, but I do anyway. I used to babysit children a lot, and I always had to read them Roald Dahl books, and it would just be a slog of getting through it. But for some reason, it wasn't a bad experience, even though I always went into it thinking it would be. It's like, as an adult, you don't want to like the silliness, but you do. It's mental.
Yeah, something like with, like the only sort of recent examples I can think, and this is probably just because of the versions they get of it every Christmas on the BBC, etc. But then they add like the Gruffalo, don't they? And then they always have like some other, version of those similar stories like in later years. And to me, they always kind of just look like the same kind of like wheelhouse of ideas, like an animal and it's dressed up as this character, etc., etc. Whereas like Dahl is very much like it's something different every single time. Like I remember being a kid in the school library, and it was kind of like, oh yeah, you could pick up the Chronicles of Narnia, but then you were just like, oh, do I want to read all 8 of those books? And it'd be the same kind of stuff each time. Whereas Roald Dahl is kind of like, oh, one's about a giant, one's about like a boy who's just like tinkering with potions, and then you've got like a book which is randomly about a man who stacks tortoises, and there's so many different weird kooky stories. So they're very fun, and they do lend themselves to the sort of theatricality and, as you said, kind of storytelling, I suppose, in a way.
I mean, there's definitely something for everyone. I think that's probably Dahl's credit. Like, being in the middle of the countryside, a lot of the kids worked on farms, went round beating pheasants, that kind of thing. All of them loved Danny the Champion of the World. Like, there's something for everyone in each of the books. Yeah.
Yeah, because he even does sort of like a lot of like personal stuff as well. I think it's just called Boy, isn't it? Which is also like, based on his childhood, etc. Yeah, and Craig, you have a history of playing Dahl characters as well. Actually, I just remembered that you played the BFG once when we were in performing arts.
Yeah, I think some magical moments from that entire experience. One is basically our absolute failed attempt of trying to have size perspective when passing the potion down to Sophie. Some fucking prick hid. We basically were going to have, I was holding a small one, would throw it down into black, and then Sophie would pick up a large version of the same bottle, and some prick hid the big version of that bottle. Just had to throw it down, and everyone just be like, believe it's meant to be big. Although I think what we did, pale in comparison to the actual BFG show that we went to see in preparation for that, this is my favourite anecdote from a theatre ever. Basically, one of the scenes when the giants are running through London, like eating children, on this stage, when the giants are running around, there's just a doll's house. This giant rips open the house, the roof of the doll's house, pulls out a doll, and it looks exactly like a Dora the Explorer doll, just rips her head off and screams. So it just rips it off, and they're like, yeah! And bear in mind, we're a bunch of like 17-year-olds at this point, 17, 18-year-olds, just surrounded by these kids who are terrified because they've just watched Dora the Explorer be brutally murdered. Not even eaten, just killed for the sake of being killed. And we're just like, rip Dora. Literally, rip Dora in half.
I suppose that does kind of link in with the darkness of Dahl, though, isn't it? And, why Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, a lot of people are drawn to it as a story.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's like a lot of morality, like dark morality plays in there. Like, a lot of people just think that his stories are just like nonsense. But it only tends to be this sort of like whimsical nonsense if you're good. If you're bad, like really, really graphic stuff happens. Things like you blow up as a blueberry. Things like you almost suffocate in chocolate. Things like just you get digitized down to like really, really small sizes and you can't come. Just really, really horrific things. And then just other stories where you just grant a really, really nice girl like psychic powers that she uses to like get revenge on evil headmasters. Yeah.
See, now I'm making comparisons to the Bible in my head.
What, so Matilda is Jesus?
No, just generally, all the weird powers for the good guys and the insanely bad punishments for the bad guys to give children a good moral framework.
I mean, he crucifies his own son, who is meant to be like the purveyor of all good. I'm not sure how much that sort of falls into that sort of comparison.
Dahl had a different moral framework.
Interestingly, with this film, I think this kind of is interesting because, again, we're talking about, a book series and an author who's doing it for his own, creativity and wants to make sort of like fun, scary, dark stories for kids, etc. But a lot of the reason that they made this film was they just wanted a film about chocolate that could kind of help to sell a new Quaker Oats bar. So I think it was like one of the children of the child of the director was reading the book and was like, oh, you should make a film of this with Uncle Dave, which was like the producer. And the main reason he got on board was because he was like, well, we were working with Quaker Oats at the time and they wanted to release a new chocolate bar, and we were like, hey, why don't you finance this film which could help like launch this new chocolate bar? And I was just like, it very much, when I saw that, I kind of very much spoke to that kind of, I suppose, like time in which we don't get as much now, maybe more so for theme parks, in which films are made kind of to like sell the theme park experiences. But back in the days of when like films were made for the toys or toys were made for the films, and similar with television series and that kind of stuff, in which they were made for a very specific purpose. So I thought that was interesting as the first one of those.
I was going to say that is like the most like film business sounding things I've ever heard of. We've got sponsors, like, let's do it. Like, that is amazing.
And yeah, it's just one of the beautiful examples of where it works. Like the original animated Transformers movie, entire like animated show and film made to just sell robot toys, and yet actual quality behind it.
Yeah,
I love it.
And I think with this one as well, it's the attraction, which when we were talking earlier again about, they're making like a prequel, and it's kind of like, even though it's kind of a strange idea, there's still the idea of like, oh, well, who's going to be Wonka? It's that kind of like the similar with Batman, etc. Who's going to be the Joker? Who's going to be the Riddler? It's something about these kind of like iconic literary characters that people go like, oh, I need to know who's going to play this person, so you can kind of add them to the Hall of Fame of characters who played this sort of like big famous character.
Hasn't it been confirmed that it's Timothée Chalamet?
Yeah, exactly. But I think what I was going to say here is obviously like Gene Wilder as Wonka has almost become as famous just in itself apart from the film. Is like his portrayal most people think of when they think of Wonka, I think. So yeah, I think the fact that, they're celebrating 50 years, as I mentioned before, you got songs like Pure Imagination, The Candyman, Cheer Up Charlie, the Oompa Loompa songs. There's so much imagery within this. There's so many memes, so many parodies have been made. So we kind of had to just talk about it for how, big a legacy it has. So in terms of our memories of the film, favorite moments, that kind of stuff, I'll go to you first, Kyle, as, when I mentioned this idea, you sort of, jumped straight away to sort of talk about this. And, what's the reason for that? What's your kind of attachment to the film?
Oh, well, growing up on it, it's weird because, obviously, like you say, there's so much, parody stuff and, spin-offs and stuff like that reference it, that, putting a direct finger on the pulse of when I fell in love with it, I think I'd have to say was, around the same time, I remember watching Alice in Wonderland, the animated Disney one, and just for the sheer left turn of a film that it is, I vividly remember that boat scene, and to this day it's one of my favorite things. I've always loved just it's a kids film. There's wonderful kooky stuff going on, but they just in older stuff there seem to be at least one moment that is completely horror, that is left field and does leave an impact on people. And I think some of the stuff these days are missing it, because if you compare that original boat scene to how they done it in the Tim Burton version, it's night and day. I know obviously you can't copy and paste it because everyone's got their own interpretations and stuff, but I don't know, there's just something about older films that had these moral lessons, but one standout moment that would scare you out of just your entire being, just what was that moment? And that tunnel boat moment is it. Even going so far as to be the opening track of I'm not gonna name drop the person because he's been cancelled, but the fact that it's the opening track to this person's first album is insane to me, and it works so well, but I refuse to give him any sort of notoriety to this point. So
fair. Yeah, but like you said, it's again, it's the music, and it's the again, you'll be watching I don't know, adverts for Sky Television, and Candyman comes up, or Pure Imagination comes up for something else, and it's just something about it that obviously people will attach themselves to. So it's that kind of sentimentality that has with it. Liv, do you have any sort of certain memories of this film, or sort of reasons that you think it works so well?
Yeah, I feel like I've had a completely different experience of this film to everyone else on the planet for the following reason. Right, I know all the songs completely off by heart, but I don't realise I know them. I remember all the memorable things like the boat and the backflip and the Blueberry Girl and all those sort of things. I remember them, but for some reason, even since I was 5-6 years old, the things in that film that I've enjoyed the most are the quintessentially 70s mundane moments. So, the weird sense of humour of the school teacher, or the computer saying, no, bugger off. And just, I don't know, the drabness of the fruity wallpaper. It's all of those just very mundane parts that I've enjoyed the most, because even they have this silliness underneath them, and because of that they stand out to me even more than the big moments. So yeah, it's a weird take I've always had on the film because of that.
Does that include Grandpa Joe being a massive benefit fraud?
To be honest, watching him learn to walk every time, I'm just thinking, that just looks like me every morning.
Again, that's what I find interesting with his portrayal in this version, is that he, at the end, he says about how they've broken the rules. He does actually say, he's like, come on, Charlie, we'll go find that Slughorn guy. I was like, wow, Grandpa Joe literally was willing to, take the evil route, or whatever, they want to call it. So I just found that hilarious. It's just they never really actually show you him kind of as the moral compass to Charlie. They kind of show him as this guy who's just yeah, why not? He's the guy in the fizzy lifting drinks room who's just let's drink it. And I'm like, what? It's you're supposed to be the adult.
We need this as the prequel. Young, shady Grandpa Joe.
I also think like people forget about the moment, like as much as like Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka is this fantastical like pantomime-esque figure, there is that moment when he finally like doesn't show his true colors, but he does lay down the law of, no, you also broke the rules, like it was said from the beginning. And I think like a lot of films, like especially like even if you look at the Johnny Depp one, doesn't have the same impact of him being that moment of just like being like, no, you know what, you f***ed up and you're gonna suffer the consequences. Granted, he like then doubles back on himself because of Charlie's willingness not to sell him out, but I think that like is a big moment of character development for him.
Oh, believe me, people have noticed and remember that scene quite well. One of my favourite things on the internet is somebody basically remixed that entire scene into like a savage Wonka rap.
Oh my god, I need to see this.
Yeah, David and I have been watching it for years. It basically just goes up to the point. It's just like what rules? We didn't see any rules, and it's basically just wrong, sir, wrong, dude, wrong, sir, wrong. It's just. It just wraps him, so it's like, you get washed, you get sterilized, you get nothing, good day, you lose. What's great is that he starts at one point he just goes, you stole nothing, you've won. Charlie goes, the chocolate, wrong, you lose. And just basically he's like, nope, keeping the chocolate.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay.
The interesting thing with that, though, I think, is maybe because why it's not as mentioned, also like looked upon as like this sort of famous moment, is maybe because it'll come down to the adaptation stuff, because that isn't in the book, and that's kind of like the stuff that they sort of like put in there with the whole Slughorn stuff, etc. But yeah, when I was watching it back, you realize the pure anger on Gene Wilder's face, because there's that moment, like we said, the tunnel scene, which is infamous as one of the most scary children's film moments ever, but that moment as well is quite terrifying in just how enraged he is, so it's crazy.
With the ticking clock in the background and just the utter silence, you're so tense in that room. Oh god.
Yeah, I don't think it helps that everything is in half in that room, so you kind of already know, like, this guy is unhinged, there's something wrong with this guy.
Credit to, like, I hope for the child's benefit that he wasn't actually stood there for Gene Wilder to deliver those lines, because I feel like that would have broke him.
I mean, he did have to go through the entire tunnel scene without being told what was going to happen.
Ah, touché, sir.
Just the respect I have for the filmmakers going like, yeah, we're just basically gonna do this as if we are just torturing these actors. Just get most of their genuine reactions to half this stuff. So I can imagine he would have just had I'm surprised that he didn't hold up Charlie like next to the camera, so Gene is just literally screaming in his face.
Yeah, actually, to be fair, now that you point out that, like, I have a feeling that he would have been, like, held there at, like, almost gunpoint to be like, no, you're going to take this on the chin. We need that real reaction.
But Liv bringing up the, like, weirder moments in the film, Mel Stewart mentions, like, his favorite parts of it being, like, the little weird sketches that almost happen when you've got the frenzy of, like, trying to find the golden tickets, etc. And it is strange because you kind of watch it going like, where's this come from? And I remember being a kid watching it, and, my memories of it was very much kind of like, oh, there's Matilda, James the Giant Peach. So as I was reading the books, I kind of wanted to find all the adaptations. And I remember watching it thinking kind of like, oh, this is like a weird, like slower, obviously the budget constraints are a bit more visible than they are in, the cartoons and those kind of stuff. And yeah, just being sort of like surprised when they just go to like this, therapy session. I was like, what's this have to do with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? But it is just the weird sketches that they drop into this film. Apparently, one of the director's favorite ones got cut from the film, and it was quite expensive to film, but it was just a man like climbing to the top of like this like Himalayan mountain, finding like a guru sat there and being like, oh, what is the meaning of life? And then he says, I will tell you if you give me a Wonka bar. And he gives him a Wonka bar. He opens it and sees there's no golden ticket, and the guru just goes, life is disappointing. And apparently it didn't play well for test audiences. And the guy was just like, why? I think this is really funny. And apparently one of his psychiatrist friends told him because people do think that life is disappointing, so they don't get the joke. It's just like reality. And I was just like...
I feel like because of how cynical we are as how we've grown up, I feel like that would land so well now.
Probably would like go down well in Britain, maybe not so much in America.
Yeah, who knows?
So yeah, I'm with you there, Liv, in terms of like the weirder moments, the more mundane. I just think of like the teacher when they tell him like Wonka's, like giving away Wonka tickets to get into his factory, and the guy's just like class dismissed, and I'm just like, I just want to see the head teacher there being like, excuse me, like all the parents like really pissed off that their children have just been like excused from school to like go wherever they want.
And that moment of them like on the weirdest machine known to mankind, like going through like the washer, that's like, that holds up so well.
Also just the weird comedy moments, like one of the parts which I found like, because obviously all the adaptations go with the kind of like, this play up the evilness and attributes of these kids of being spoiled, greedy, all that kind of stuff. But just the fact that when they go to like the Gloop family and like they're showing them like having a meal, like I think that's what's interesting with like the Burton one, for example. They show he loves chocolate and he's just eating loads and loads of candy and chocolate. But this version, they're like, no, he's just like a connoisseur of, like German cuisine. He's there with his like, with German sausage and all different sorts of meals. But to the point that like an interviewer like gives the microphone to his father to like ask what he thinks, and his dad just eats the microphone. I was like, wow. They were like, how can we show what this guy's father's like? He just eats the microphone.
I think that's some of the thing for me anyway that misses in the Burton version, is that for as much wild stuff that there is in the original, like it almost seems like less is more in comparison, because like to have to redo Veruca's salt thing of having her be called a bad nut, like it's a little bit too much, to be fair. Like even going so far for me anyway as to like go into Wonka's backstory, I personally feel like he's almost in the same vein as the Joker, where he doesn't necessarily need a backstory. Like that's half of the fun, because like all the sociopathic fan theories actually have some validity and weight because we just don't know.
You're saying it to the wrong person there. David is a defendant of the Tim Burton version.
No, I know, I'm trying to rile him up a little.
Oh, I'll join you.
No, but that's what's interesting, again, though, when we get, credit to them as well, is that the adaptation-wise, the bad nut thing, that's in the book. So the squirrel thing is actually faithful to the book. But obviously they couldn't do that back in the 70s. So, credit to them to go in, oh, well, what's the equivalent? Oh, bad egg. I was like, yeah, that's, pretty clever,
yeah,
to be fair.
When you put it side by side like that, okay, I'll yield this time, sir.
What are some of our other favourite moments or memorable moments from the film?
I quite like every time I'm reminded that this is Cold War era, which is a lot in that film. Watched it through earlier today, and it was the only thing I could think of throughout. Just how every Slugworth moment is framed. I'm just thinking, Cold War. Cold War. Every TV moment as well, and every vaguely competitive moment, I'm just thinking, it's definitely the 70s.
To be fair, like with every Slughorn framing, I feel like it's like suddenly turning into a Hitchcock movie.
I'm just trying to think, how could chocolate be used to win the Cold War?
How can space win it? Like,
oh no, that was always just a power play, right?
Chocolate is too.
We can get to space. Look what we could do to you. Here is just, look at all the great chocolate we have. What could we do to you? Give it. Here you go.
It was actually called the Cuban Chocolate Crisis. They just had a ship of chocolate bars that couldn't go over a certain like border line, which they were just like, if you do this, we're going to start a war.
There was also a deleted scene in my brain where Fidel Castro has chocolate cigars.
Oh no, there's a deleted scene in my head where Fidel Castro has a golden ticket and he's like, hey!
It's almost as realistic as him winning the lottery 3 times.
Hey, you never know. Maybe he was the guy from South America who won the 5th ticket, but then it turned out to be a fake.
I was going to say, yeah, because that's almost interesting that the Tim Burton version, I think it's Russians who fake the ticket. So again, like talking real world politics, back then they were like, oh, those South Americans. Like this day, they're like, oh, those Russians, so that is quite telling to when the films are made.
Maybe that's something that'll show up in the prequel is Russia decides to have its own Willy Wonka.
North Korea is trying to find out the secrets of Wonka. Mentioning like when it's filmed and stuff, I think is interesting as well, because something that always kind of bugged me as a kid, which I find is interesting again and is very much a movie business kind of thing, is the look of the film, like where it's filmed. And even as a kid, I was kind of like, where is this set? Why does it look like Germany? And it is, for budget reasons, it was filmed in Munich, Germany. And, and what I find absolutely hilarious, can anybody tell me what the Wonka factory actually is in real life?
Was it like a munition factory or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was it's the Munich Gasworks factory.
Not much of a stretch to change to killing children, then.
Yeah.
Jesus!
It's the film!
But like even like the idea that like Grandpa Joe and Charlie were literally moments away from being like diced meat is like insanely dark.
Well, Craig mentioned that remix of the Wrong Sir scene. One of my favorites, or like parodies of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And again, I think this speaks to its kind of legacy and how famous the film is because they've parodied it so much. You see, obviously, Oompa Loompa costumes, the kind of like classic look. So much from this film is like referenced in pop culture. Even before we recorded, we were talking about the Wonka bars, so you don't really see the Tim Burton Wonka bars. You see the, Gene Wilder sort of ones. And, there's a sketch by College Humor from years and years ago called Fizzy Lifting Drinks. And it's just like a minute-long animation in which they can't burp. So it's just literally like this grim death of Grandpa Joe as he's like, I can't burp. And he's just like, Jesus, Grandpa. He's like, swallow some air or something. And then literally it's just like blood shreds all over the corridor. And Charlie just there like, oh. And then it's just half his grandpa like, go head first, Charlie. It will be less painful. And then you just see him slowly floating up going, come with me and we'll be. And then it just cuts away.
I just like, at what part, like, it's so bizarre to me, like, just like, how was this okayed? Like, just the concept, like, at what point do producers test audiences go, hang on a moment, let's rethink that.
Because it is quite scary. They're like screaming for their lives. They're like, help, oh my God. So I can see why they made that sketch, because it is quite traumatizing. It does seem like they're genuinely going to die.
Yeah, but that's the thing, like even Jurassic Park, like the opening scene to that with the Velociraptor, again, is another moment that I can immediately think of is like the rating on that, okay, what is it, like PG, so parental guidance, but even then, like, it's still a bit like, whew, let's hang on a moment.
Can anyone remember the original book, or was like, was read it, or like has strong feelings of reading it? Because that, that song is in the book, the Tunnel song. So when he does, sing the whole, there's no way of knowing. But again, because it's such a short story, a children's book, it's hard to get the context of, what's happening. You just hear that all of the parents are kind of like, he's mad, what's going on? All this kind of stuff. So it could be adapted in one of many ways. I guess the Burton version kind of keeps the scariness of like, they're scared about not knowing where they're going and they're on the boat and stuff like that. But the Gene Wilder one does bring in all this imagery and stuff, which is definitely not in the book. Roald Dahl didn't write a chicken gets beheaded on the side of them.
For me, that scene just encapsulates why I think Gene Wilder is my favorite part of the film. Just that you have no idea exactly what to expect from him from any situation. Like the fact that he has the weird journey of being a frail old man to begin with, then coming straight back to life and being energetic, consistently being authoritative and wise with all his information, then just plain psychotic in terms of just the imagery, then just blasé to the deaths of children, even to the point of like some of my favorite quotes of being, no, stop, come back.
Help, please, murder.
which I will still quote from time to time when somebody like kicks up a fuss about something I just don't care about. Then getting actually emotionally invested right at the end, both in terms of disappointment and anger and utter joy. It's just, you don't know where you stand with the guy, and it's just incredibly beautiful. Like, genuinely one of Gene Wilder's, like, best performances.
Yeah, because there's that whole thing as well about, like, the only thing he wanted changed in the film was to add that forward role, because his ideology was, they will never know if I'm telling the truth from this point on.
Yeah. And it just works so well.
Yeah, because I think, like, I don't know what it is about Johnny Depp's one, I'm not knocking at all, but, like, there's just something about it that just, like, goes in a different direction of weird that doesn't quite land as well as Wilder's, I think.
Yeah, they go for the socially isolated, meaning that he has no filter in interactions, which just doesn't have the same. To me, that doesn't have the same sort of impact of whimsy and like fear, because you just know that the guy's going to be too honest with you, if that makes sense. Especially considering that, like, there's no like moral test, right? The ending of that film is literally just he says, "Yep, Charlie, the factory's yours so long as you never see your family again." Charlie's like, "No, I'm not going to do that. I love my family." And then that becomes like the end conflict of just getting Wonka to see his father, who was so keen on abandoning the child, he moved his entire house. Which is like my favorite facet of that film, is that Christopher Lee's dentist father was so disappointed in his child, he yeeted his entire house off of the street we don't know where the house is.
A terraced house, not even like an end terrace. Yeah. This was like in the middle of the road.
You literally see the pipe spewing water from where he's had to cut off from the mains.
Another thing I was going to say is, like, in terms of, like, compare and contrast, like, with Wilder's, like, you know, like, there's a part of me that actually believes that he could run a chocolate factory with Wonka. Like with Johnny Depp's Wonka, I kind of feel like I'm like, how do you do taxes, sir?
Well, again, that's why I think of them like similar to like the Joker, is kind of like, you know, say, for example, you know, maybe a bad example in terms of like the actual performance that we got, but in terms of like what people were saying before the performance, but Jared Leto as Joker, for example, he couldn't live up to Heath Ledger as the Joker. You just can't, you know, you can't top that performance. You can't do anything similar. And there's so many facets of the character that you can only do something different. So, you know, I appreciate it in the sense of like they are completely different performances. For me, I think neither of them to me have still captured actually like the character in the book. I think, again, because it's such a like simplistic character, as is, you know, many of the characters in the book, you know, it's kind of hard to sort of like maybe encapsulate that, because you can do that very well in like literary terms, because you've got words and you know, you got your imagination. But both times it's interesting that both actors have kind of brought like the dark elements to it, and the script writers as well. I think like Johnny Depp, for example, wanted to focus on more the kind of like showman, game show presenter elements of Wonka, which I thought was interesting. You see that come through at certain parts, but obviously Burton and the writers were more interested in, like Craig said, that kind of like isolated, kind of weird version. So, you know, I appreciate it for being something different, and it's something I enjoy. But I think that Gene Wilder does definitively still own the character, especially in the sense that he's got the traditional brown hat, the purple coat, and everything like that. But so when you think of Willy Wonka, the character within film, I think of him. Whether he's like Willy Wonka from the book, I don't think maybe he is, but then I don't think Johnny Depp is either, and I don't know if anybody ever would be. So I think it's kind of like just down to that person's interpretation, how they adapt that character and make it their own.
I think the big difference here between the two of them is neither of them necessarily encapsulate the character, but Gene's performance encapsulates the book. Like, if you look at Johnny Depp's Willy Wonka, you've got him very awkward, his movements, he just walks around effectively like a really shy lawyer, and he's got this bob that's just so perfectly done. You think he's was granted as a child maybe an entire PR team to curate everything he does. They even imply in that film that the Oompa Loompas, all their songs are rehearsed in advance, that kind of things. It just feels so incredibly manufactured. So for me, like, you compare that to Gene, and he's got the wild hair, he's got the wild personality. That's not necessarily trying to be the character. It's trying to be the entire book, and I think that's why it's memorable.
I think that's a fair point. I think that's a point that no one can really argue with, goddamn.
To me, a lot of the reasons that people love this version of the film, which is interesting because obviously, like I said, we've talked about it in terms of like why it's dark and psychotic, but so many people like rag on the Burton version because they're like, it's dark and scary. This should be about pure imagination and like, you know, Disney and kind of like everything is lovely and happy endings. And I'm just like, but it's Roald Dahl. That's not what Roald Dahl is about. And, you know, granted, again, like Burton made it kind of like Burton meets Dahl, but yeah, I don't think that a lot of people look at this film through the lens of nostalgia and the kind of like pure imagination. So I love the songs in this film, but I don't necessarily love them in the film. Like I like, you know, Pure Imagination, great song, Candyman. I've Got a Golden Ticket is really great. But again, I just don't think they quite work within the story of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory because it seems like almost a contrast to what Dahl would want, you know, that you've got kind of like happy singing along kind of lyrics when usually when he does have like the Oompa Loompa stuff, for example, you know, it's kind of like singing about how horrible these children are, etc. Because obviously the Oompa Loompa doopity doo stuff is original to that film. Was at least Danny Elfman was drawing some of the lyrics from Dahl's versions of those songs. But I'm not using that as a point to sort of say why that film is better. I'm just saying that the songs within Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory don't seem like a genuine sort of bit of what Dahl would have wanted.
Yeah, but I think there are lots of instances where a lot of filmmakers, songwriters, etc., will try and hide like darkness within sort of like light fluffiness. I mean, you just have to watch entire lists of just songs which seem really happy with like sort of dark backgrounds, like Hey Ya by Outkast, right? That's a song about divorce, but it's one of the most like upbeat, peppy things you can imagine. And I think like all the happy songs you're talking about do generally happen sort of bookending the experiences within the factory. So it's like it is taking what people expect this entire experience within the factory to be, and then the actual within the factory, the darkness is just like the Oompa Loompa sort of subverting that with like, because they tend to be like the quirkier, like more disorientating songs, right? Like, you know, Candyman is quite sweet melody, Pure Imagination, sweet melody. Oompa Loompa songs are all quite choppy and changing, even to the point that the last one goes like really deep and dramatic because it just really slows down the pace. So I think just for the atmosphere, it does work for me.
I also love how cyclical the film industry is, that like they tried to keep the Burton one somewhat musical with just the Oompa Loompa songs and then going, okay, this prequel is going to be a full musical.
Yeah, the prequel is just such an odd choice again, because it is kind of one of those things to me of like, why do I want to know? Like you said earlier, like it's like the Joker, why do we need to know that story? But I think interestingly as well is that's why I kind of see Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory as a kind of like almost as if they are doing like, you know, we want to have our version of Mary Poppins, or it's a kind of chitty chitty bang bang sort of Wizard of Oz kind of like approach to it, of being like these kind of like painted sets and this kind of like old Hollywood sort of approach of having this more like charming story. So to me, I've always seen it as kind of like Hollywood being like, oh, let's make this charming, even though maybe the source material isn't. But it's just interesting to me that when people do say like, oh yeah, the newer one is so weird and dark and stuff, I'm like, you've seen the tunnel scene, right? You know, so again, that's just more a criticism to the people who sort of only see it as like a happy, magical kind of film.
The moment that always sticks into my head is right at the start when Charlie's just finished his paper round going past the factory. And you get the tinker coming with just a crate just of knives and cleavers. They're going up the windy mountain, down the something, something, something. And it's pitch black and there's eerie music in the background and suddenly the lights turn on. And I'm just sat there thinking, how the hell do people go from all yay happy, then that, and not suddenly think, oh damn, this film's going to be petrifying? And I think the fact that you've kind of set the tone with that maybe means that it doesn't matter how happy everything from there on is. The happiness scares you because you've already had this tone set.
Well, yeah, like, again, bringing up those, like, moments we said about before, you know, where they've added these kind of, like, weird sketches of, like, the hysteria over the golden tickets, as, you know, Liv said, etc. It's a very 70s kind of thing to do. And, you know, it pads out the story maybe for sort of budget reasons, but it does kind of add, like, its own sort of style to it of, like, these filmmakers going, like, oh, well, let's look at this kind of, like, hysteria, because, again, within the book and the story and everything, it's kind of like it just, you know, everyone's just talking about on the news, you know, how it's going crazy around the world. But the interesting thing about this film is because there's so much parody and memes have been made from it, it kind of almost as if the film was doing that early on, you know. So, like, one of my favorite scenes is when you do get, you know, it's odd within the film, but I kind of do still like it on itself. It's just these little sketches that you get. And it's that one where the guy is laying down. He's like, I've had this dream and the angel tells me where I can find the Wonka ticket. And the therapist just like, he's just like, and what's it say? He's like, oh, it's just a dream. He's like, tell me where the ticket is, man, you know? And then you get that bizarre one where like a woman's husband has been taken for ransom, like hostage situation. And all they want like in return for him is like a crate of Wonka bars. And the woman has to like say like, how much time have I got to think it over of whether she wants to give up her Wonka bars for a kidnapped husband? I think the only thing that would have made that harsher, because when I was first rewatching it, I had to rewind and be like, wait, did they say husband? Because if it was a child or something, that can you imagine how dark that would have been if it was like your son has been kidnapped?
But that's the thing, like you can be as like to the book as you can be, but if in the book it's just people on the news talking about it, there's not enough dramatic tension, whereas having these like comedic scenes and frenzied scenes of people making it such a big deal, you've already put this character of Willy Wonka in people's minds of, oh, okay, he's a big deal, he means this, I can't wait to see what he's actually like it's a structured method and it does work. So like as much as you can be, okay, yeah, I could happily do a couple of cut-ins of news reporters talking about it and then maybe one or two families talking about it. It doesn't have the same, it doesn't keep you as engaged as seeing those people going absolutely bananas for it. I will say, like, I think it's an ode to the writing, not just of the scriptwriters, but for Dahl himself to have quite an extensive list of characters in a short medium, to have them all stand out as much as they do, and especially for that moral of like Charlie like being there by luck and having this moral story of being a good person is like really good. But to have all of these children, as pantomime and stereotypical as their tropes may be, stand out as well as they do, and nobody really steals a scene from each other, and each one has their comeuppance and their justification and their own song, is absolutely fantastic. To be able to give those characters that and not undermine each other is fantastic.
And even just the fact that Veruca gets her own song herself as well, like that's quite a good song as well, is, you know, I want the world, because I quite often think of that when, say, somebody is having like a moment of greed or something, like, you know, like, oh, I want to get that, you know, like £1,000, you know, like extravagant purchase, and I just always think in my head like, I want the world, I want da-da-da, you know. It's just like,
that is like the one thing that does irk me in that movie, is how bad the lip sync is for that scene.
Yeah,
like
when she has the like idly like shaking around, it's like, oh
yeah, that absolute moment, it's like, hold on a minute, that's not real.
But in terms of imagery and stuff, I will say that, like, I think that Violet, I think, like, hers, the blueberry, is, like, that's such a, like, iconic image. And, you know, just makes me interested in, like, the actual prop, because when the Oompa Loompas are rolling her around, you can kind of just see her head, like, rolling around, and I'm just like, is that the kid, or is that, like, some sort of plastic mannequin head? I don't know.
Well, everyone, like, all of it is, like, so, like, it stands a testament to itself, because like everyone knows Augustus in the pipe, everyone knows Violet turning into Violet the blueberry. Like, I'm obviously not so much the maybe the ceiling fan, because obviously it's not in the Burton version, but the Mike TV stuff as well, like every one of them is almost like a complete juxtaposition from the last. But like it, like on paper, like if someone went, right, every scene is for one character and it's a different way from the last, you'd be like, oh, that sounds tricky, and I don't know how that's going to land. But the fact that it all just flows together seamlessly is brilliant.
Yeah, well, we'll go now to, in terms of talking about the legacy and everything like that was memorable from these films. We go to our section, which is the Movie Vault, which is our film vault that preserves movies for all time as memorable pieces of history, whether that be for good reasons or bad reasons. So, Liv, I'll go to you first. Do you think that this film deserves to go into the Movie Vault, and why?
Definitely. It's an absolute cult classic. I don't think there is a single person born after the mid-70s who hasn't seen it in their childhood and who can't reference at least something from it.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to. It's just I'd put Burton's version in there as well, just for the parallels and to compare and contrast. But it's just one of those things. Just the concept is so bulletproof of children going to a chocolate factory. It's almost Pied Piper-esque in the way that they're taken through it. It's just magnifique.
He even has the little flute there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Craig.
Yeah, of course. Although, for me, only original. You know my issues with Burton's film.
I will admit that I think for the fact this is celebrating 50 years, as much I think you are right, Kyle, that they're interesting to have together, even to say, oh, this is how times have changed, as we were saying earlier, he's playing video games and then he was watching Westerns with Mike TV, etc. And to show how adaptations can change and you can take it in two completely different directions, but also have similarities. I think because this is celebrating its 50th anniversary and because this, as Liv said, is especially because it's such a cult classic film and it's got so many nuances and weird things just in itself. I think it's important to remember for that reason alone. Whereas again, maybe the Burton version would be a sort of celebration of Burton. But I think this film itself just it's not so much this is a depiction of what perfect Dahl adaptations are like. It's just its own thing. It's just become, like I said earlier, some people see it as a kind of magical Disney-esque sort of film. People like us probably more the it's got some really effed up shit with, scary tunnels and, all kind of weird moments and this kind of very 70s aesthetic of the fruit wallpaper and all that kind of stuff and the gimmicky jokes as well of when Gene Wilder's putting shoes into potions. He's gives it a little kick and all this kind of stuff. It's very much of that time. So yeah, I think into the Movie Vault goes Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Quickly though, why do you think that they wanted to call it Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? I don't know if it's they thought the audience is Charlie or something, or put yourself in the shoes of the kid who's just Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory sounds more amazing or something.
Surely it's going to be for marketability reasons, right? If one of the entire things they wanted to do was basically sell chocolate alongside it, it's a lot harder to basically go, well, I got a Wonka bar from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, as opposed to I got a Wonka bar from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah. By Joe, he's got it. By Joe.
Really hanging now.
It's so annoying!
All right, endgame time. And welcome, my friends, to Market Snackability. I tried. One of the things I miss about the cinema industry at the moment is that in the past you had a lot more direct film cinema tie-ins to food and snacks and sort of that marketing, right? You'd see things like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle based sweets. You'd see a lot of cereals which are just various film characters, loads and loads of things like that. I miss that. So what I've decided for this game is I've got 5 different films or film franchises that I want you to come up with a brand new snack based on that film. Right? The only rules for this game, well, 2 rules. 1, you'll have 30 seconds to basically come up with your pitch. 2, it has to be a food that could genuinely exist, right? So you cannot be oh, this is going to be snozberry flavored. I'm bringing that up because at no point throughout the entirety of the episode so far have we said the word snozzberry, and I find that disgusting.
What's a snozzberry?
I will strike you. So it has to be something that could exist, right? So it can't just be like, say, if one of the films I gave you was Harry Potter, it can't be like one of the fictional animal meat, right? Are we clear on the rules, or do we have any questions?
Does human meat count?
Okay.
You said what I was thinking.
Something that could be genuinely sold, and we would not get a visit from the police. Right? So this is also, you cannot also just market drugs, because that would also be slightly problematic.
Right, well, that's all of my pitches in the bin.
Okay. Something that wouldn't appear in Abe's Odd World. The game.
The way this will be judged is that we'll listen to your pitches for each film, and then David and I will decide which one we prefer the sound of in terms of what we would want to eat, and then award the points based off of it. Okay, so your first film or film franchise is X-Men, and your 30 seconds starts now.
Right, I'm going to go with an ultimate food blend for mutation.
Well,
so it's
okay,
wait,
no. The end of the 30 seconds, and then...
okay.
This isn't like fastest one first.
Oh, well, I'm eager.
And that's 30 seconds. All right then, Kyle, as you're so eager, Liv, what food are you going to suggest to us?
Okay, right. You may love this, you may hate this, but it is exceptionally well tuned to what the X-Men series is about, and that is blue body paint. So this is going to be like just your classic brunch bar, but on the outside, it's, you know how a lot of dyes are edible? You're going to have blue dye, and it tastes just like your standard brunch bar, but you can use it for blue face paint.
Okay, so just to be clear, the marketability of this snack is that it doubles up as a costume.
You can be Mystique. You can be anyone you want to be when you have this brunch.
Parents are going to love you for that. It's just be like, oh, have you been eating that X-Men brunch bar again?
And luckily, if you want to be Violet from Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory, it works for another franchise.
Okay, so we have that pitch. Kyle.
Keeping in theme with mutation, I was going to go with a mutated sandwich. So it's part hot dog, part hamburger, and part pizza. Don't ask me how the logistics of keeping that sumbitch together works, but I'm going purely for mutation reasons that it has to be a bit chaotic.
Okay. So David, what do you think?
I think I would have to go with the brunch bar just because it's kind of like the more fun item, and it kind of like, you would see the blue and be like, oh yeah, X-Men. Like, I don't know if I would see burger, hot dog, pizza and go, oh, X-Men. Like, if anything, you might be offended if you were like a mutant and being like, what are you trying to say? That like I'm a hodgepodge of all these different things.
To be fair,
like
what you've described with a hot dog, burger, pizza is basically what I have like once every other 2 weeks.
Well, the thing is, if we're going on pitches alone, if the brunch bar's only blue, you can only be Kurt Wagner or Mystique. That's all I'm saying.
Beast?
Damn it.
I'm intrigued as to why a brunch bar. Was there a reason as to why what was unique? What was about a brunch bar in the X-Men universe?
They have to be ready for anything. I don't know.
It's a school bar, like, I don't know.
Superheroes need energy.
Fair.
Okay, so the first point goes to Liv.
Don't know how.
Well, I mean, just wait until you see some of the ones we've got coming up. Okay, ready for film number 2. How to Train Your Dragon, and your time starts now.
When does he get it?
He doesn't.
Why not?
Because he broke the rules.
What rules? We didn't see any rules, did we, Charlie?
Wrong, sir, wrong. Wrong, sir, wrong. Wrong, sir, wrong.
And that's 30 seconds. Fittingly, right on the you lose. Okay, Kyle. What snack are you pitching?
I'm going to pitch a hot dog company that the carton containers are dragon themed and that the sausage itself is supposed to build up their integral body part, the sternum, and depending on each dragon has a different variety of spice to it, and because of the time period as well, it's tailored to adults, so it comes with a mead.
Okay. So we've gone for an entire franchising there. Interesting. Liv, what are you suggesting?
Okay, so the I'm sticking with the initial idea that I didn't quite develop in my mind.
Right.
We've got, when you go to buy this wonderful promotional product, you've got a drone, and then on top of it you've got a slab of raw pork. It's like meat and flying. That's what a dragon is made up from. My mind didn't get past the raw meat.
Your mind didn't even think to cook the pork.
No, because when you open up a dragon, the meat is raw.
So salmonella.
I just like to remind everyone that this is meant to be like, a snack-based thing. I just have this image now of just Liv like at like a vending cart, just handing out like pieces of raw pork, and just like, I'm really sorry I've run out of drones because drones are expensive.
Yeah, it comes with free tech.
I'm just imagining like an army, like, when you see like in Spider-Man Far From Home, like all the drones, like they're just coming in with just little bits of pork underneath, and they're like, the military just watching with binoculars, like, what the hell is that?
All right, David.
Heathrow is shut down by a snack.
All right, David. Who are you gonna vote for?
As much as I love the insanity of the Deliveroo option of raw meat, I think I'm gonna have to go with. I like the fact that Kyle added like the spiced meat into like the hot dog, because the How to Train Your Dragon, they have green dragons and red and yellow, and they're all different like powers and stuff like that. So it kind of fits in with that. So I quite like that. So yeah, my vote's for Kyle's.
Yeah, I also like the idea of the containers. I think you could have probably done a bit more to basically say like the buns could be somewhat dragon shaped, but talking about the actual dog itself being like part of specifically the sternum of the dragon.
I know. I was like, wait, are we talking about Titanic or something?
But at least it was shape description in comparison to what I love about the flying drones of raw pork meat. So yeah, in that situation, point to Carl. Okay, are we ready for your third film? The Wolf of Wall Street. Time starts now. We'll go to Liv.
So I figured since the last one was quite wildly out there, I would go in the complete opposite direction and go as normal as possible. So the promotional product here is going to be, because it's, about the money in that show, it's going to be a packet of Christmas chocolate coins, but with the Wolf of Wall Street poster on the tag.
Okay. So going for pure advertising on what is an actual edible product. Okay. Kyle.
So mine is less of just one product and more of a party service for children. And everything there is pure candy, but made to look as close to drugs as humanly possible. So we're talking like little Quaalude, like mints, or like the little sherbet candies. We've got like ground up like powdered cocaine that obviously is not cocaine but more like frosting and icing mix. Yeah, we're teaching kids a valuable lesson with a Class A stock market drug fueled party.
Do the kids still snort it?
That's up to the kids.
Is it actually just going to be like that Community episode in which like they all eat the candy and then at the end of it they like have to turn on the candy and it's like, oh, I get it now. Like you've like given them the reliance on drugs and then they've realized that they don't want it. It's genius.
Just to say, you frame this as a party service for kids. What I imagine is that it. Could you explain that a little bit more? Because I'm just getting this image of like, you know, you get party planners. You're basically saying, so for your child's 12th birthday, what I'll do is I'll bring around a load of sweets made to look like drugs, give them to the kids, and let nature take its course.
Absolutely. No responsibility taken. It's all in the hands of God now.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So while Liv went more grounded, I went the opposite route.
I just imagine it kind of like those people who like have a pick a mix or something at their wedding. It's just like the entire thing has been organized by some other company, but just come along this random company that's done the sweets, and just that bit is just the weird, like, what is that doing there? Like, everything else is normal, just that.
We're talking the love hearts as Quaaludes. We're talking little tabs of LSD as little like sour patches they put on their tongues. We're going all out.
Oh wow.
Right, David.
Right.
What do we think?
I think just so that like we're not like chased down for like condoning children taking drugs, I'm gonna have to go with Liv's idea.
Yeah.
I'm ahead of my time, damn it.
I mean, if you are able to find me a viable large audience who are okay with their children emulating taking drugs, bear in mind that like that already there's enough people who frown upon children eating sweets as if they're smoking cigarettes. I can't imagine how it looks as if they're honking cocaine. Point to Liv. Okay, are we ready for number 4? This is definitely probably my favorite for let's see if anyone's willing to go there. Ready? Black Beauty. And your time starts now. Right. So let's see what snacks have been suggested for the beautiful story about an incredibly beloved horse. Kyle.
I was thinking, keeping in terms with party planning now, it's a piñata, like the horse, but when you break it, it comes out with like molded shaped chocolates that are also in the shape of the horse. But if you opt for the premium package, they come with little candy sticks that if you break one of your horse's legs, you get to put it down.
I was honestly terrified that you were going to be like, when you break it open, some jelly organs come out or something. I was like, oh my God, what has he done?
It's literally at every stage. I was just like, oh, where is this going to go? Yeah. And then we've gone for the losers of the Grand National. Also, put it down. Like, what? Oh, okay.
You can't have a horse with a main leg, okay?
But how do you put down a chocolate horse?
You take the candy stick and you lodge it in the brain.
Oh God, somewhere in the world Alex McCready is crying. Anyway, Liv.
Yeah, so all I can envision now is children really violently beating up a piñata horse. But no, I was originally thinking along the lines of like a horse meat hot dog with the words nay mustarded on it, but I assumed you were going to take horse meat. So in the end, my mind went to a box of, like, carrots.
Just carry on. Please carry on.
and other vegetables that horses would eat. I know they like carrots and other things too. In like a nest of hay in this box, so it looks like nice and organic, like you'd buy it at Waitrose. And it's just like in a nice, pretty very countryside basket, these vegetables. And you just advertise them as the same diet as Black Beauty. And people will be really into it because it's organic.
Okay, so we have two options in front of us, David. Do we have eating like a Black Beauty lunchbox, so you eat like Black Beauty, or a Black Beauty piñata, where you have the opportunity, if you pay that little bit extra, to put down loads of miniature Black Beauties?
I'm honestly surprised the lid just didn't go like, right, horse meat on a drone. Well, I don't know. It's like you said, I don't know. Like the idea of just like a parent being like, my child is going to eat like a horse. It somewhat tickles me. It's like a child would walk into school with like their dearly lunchable, and then some other kid would just get out a box of like root vegetables.
But think, David, I think you would genuinely get a lot of kids actually eating the vegetables like that. If you just say, if you want to be strong like Black Beauty, eat the Black Beauty lunchbox, which is just vegetables.
Yeah.
I won't lie, if I was given that lunchbox, I wouldn't use my hands as well. I would eat it like Black Beauty.
I like the idea with the piñata. I like where Carl was going with that. But then, I don't know, I suppose as soon as you mention like a piñata has to open up, that's just leading to all sorts of chaos. So regardless of what Kyle's idea of like the putting the horses down, I think even the idea of like cracking it open, I just thought of intestines. So I'm probably going to go with the root vegetables on this one.
See, just because I'm personally slightly torn, because I think both ideas are great in different ways. So this is what I'm going to do. I am going to split the point in half and give one each side. So because there's a small part of me that also thinks that a lot of children and would want Black Beauty parties where you could have those piñatas. So it's a case of, I think Carl's is more popular for the kids, but Liv's is more popular for the parents. So I'm going to give them half a point each. So at that point, basically half each. So going into the final film, we currently have Liv with 2.5, Carl 1.5. If Kyle wins this next round, it'll be a tie, and then we will do a tie break, which will basically be one final film, and David solely decides who wins. Okay, are you ready for the final film? So this film is the Lego Movie, and your time starts now. Okay.
Disclaimer before we even get any of the ideas. Don't eat Legos. You can't eat plastic. Don't do it, guys.
Liv.
Right, so the moment you mentioned Lego, my mind instantly went to what Lego tastes like. Because contrary to this disclaimer, most of us have probably had some Lego in our mouths at some point. Tearing bricks apart from other bricks when they get stuck together, that kind of thing. So I was thinking, what else has the texture and the crunchiness of these bricks? And that is really hard sugar structures, you know, when you're moulding sugar, that kind of thing. So I was thinking, like, sugar, shaped like maybe the little minifigures or maybe just a brick wall, but all the pieces are stuck together, so you have to, like, really bite to pull them apart as if it were real Lego. And it wouldn't taste sugary, though. It would taste slightly plasticky, but it would have the sort of, once you break it apart, the texture of those candy bracelets.
Okay. So essentially like a candy bracelet-esque style Lego. Okay, interesting.
That taste of plastic.
Yeah, how do you make something taste of plastic but be safe?
Use the right E-numbers.
Okay, cool. Right, Kyle.
Similar sort of thing. Like, we've all had the problem with eating Lego. So, to get around this disclaimer, I have decided to create your own Jello plastic molds that come with Jello packets that you can make different little Lego structures and people, and you can use the gelatin itself to have different coloured limbs and body parts. So at least then, if your children want to make food or something fun and want to eat their Legos, they can do it safely.
Okay, so we've got hardened sugar Lego versus Jello Lego. David, what do you think?
I think ultimately when you're going to make a food product based off Lego or the Lego movie, there's always going to be some kind of like, should you do this? So I suppose, either ones are going to be like a bad idea in some way or form. Yeah, I kind of like the idea with the candy bracelet, like that description, because I kind of couldn't get an idea of it before that. But then the idea of like breaking into that, pulling it off, that made more sense to me. But I kind of wish that was more the idea, like bricks on a necklace or something like that. So I think the Lego might do like the similar Jello thing with like ice cubes or something. But yeah, I'm going to go for the Lego Jello.
So when I thought about this, Lego Jello was one of the things already in my mind.
That's where my head went to as well.
Slight advantage there. Yeah, I think for the sake of making things interesting, I think I am going to vote for Lego Jello as well. So Kyle gets the point.
Also, the idea of something tasting like plastic is a bit dodgy, but then I thought of Bean there is those jelly beans, Bean Boozled, which gets like, snot flavor and, all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, that it can be done. Yeah.
The snot one tastes nicer than the cinnamon one. I'm putting that out there.
It's a fun fact. When I was a kid, there was actually something that would have worked for this. What they did was I can't remember which it was, but there was a yogurt brand whose entire selling point was that once you've eaten the yogurt, you can wash out the pots and use them like Lego. So they would like slot together as building bricks, which was an interesting... I don't know how you do the bottom slotting together, but I don't know. Anyway, so that's at the end of that. That's 2.5 points each, so split right down the middle. So as promised, there will be a tiebreaker. David will be the sole judge for this. And this is the final film to decide your film-based snack. Ready? My favourite movie, Whiplash. Your time starts now. Alright then, David, who do you want to hear first?
Let's go with Kyle first, isn't it?
So I was thinking about those little animal cookies with like the chocolate on the backs in the shape of animals. I was thinking that for like drum sets, but with the added bonus of getting ones with like little jam filling for Miles Teller's blood.
Okay. So yeah, they're drum shaped, but yeah, they've got the blood from.
Yeah, drum shaped little cookies.
But the occasional one reminds us of the oppression that Andrew Neiman faced.
Live.
Okay, so disclaimer before I throw this one out there. It didn't occur to me till the end of the 30 seconds that something could be musical, to do with a musical-related film. So this is just one of the most iconic scenes in Whiplash, reconstructed in a bake-off showstopper style, and sold in the cake aisle of Asda. So it's gonna be it's gonna be about this big, and it's gonna be a car on its side made of icing, cake, and sugar snap. And there's going to be like blue sugar smashed all across like the cardboard for like where the window's smashed. and there's going to be like strawberry jam smothering the scene, and then there's going to be like a massive dent in the top of the car. And we're just going to have a little icing figure of Miles Teller, like reaching out of the plastic see-through cover of the box, just like trying to get to his rehearsal thingy. Yeah.
So just to...
Solid cake idea. That sounds
Have we
great.
got an icing J.K. Simmons? That's the clincher. Have we got an icing version of J.K. Simmons? I think just on the side, like raging at him.
Okay, I'm not going to say my opinions on these. I am, as per the rules, I'm going to go to David.
So different. Right. I'm gonna ask one question just because I think that they both sound very good. They both sound very interesting. So I'm gonna ask you, if I was to like open one of these and like eat it, what am I tasting? What are the flavors in these foods? So Liv, what does this cake taste like?
Metal.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So everything in it will be high in iron, magnesium, you know, those kind of, like this, the stuff you get in a vitamin tablet. So you've like got that spinachiness in the background to just be like, you can taste the metal of the car and the iron in Teller's blood. But you've also got that strawberry coming through as the hope that he will get there.
A strawberry and spinach flavoured cake.
Not spinach! Spinachy.
Great for protein.
Oh my god.
Kyle.
Basic vanilla cookie biscuit with chocolate back with a smidgen of raspberry if you should opt for the raspberry infused flavoured ones.
They're so different.
Yeah, I went for the pure marketability and Liv just went off.
Like when you say like, is it like wagon wheels? You can buy them with the raspberry or not? Is that?
Yes, yeah.
Right.
I just went for what I thought I would buy.
What, zinc tablets?
In the form of a massive car crash cake.
You know, I'm going to go based on just for the boldness of the idea. I'm going to go for Liv because I think if Kyle had said that they were all raspberry ones and you had like just bloodied drum kits like throughout, I would have like maybe gone for it. But I don't know if you could actually
There was no way I'm winning against a full cake of a car
showstopper
with a dying Miles Teller trying to get to the rehearsal.
And I'm just intrigued to try and find this strawberry flavour amongst the metal flavours of this. Like, I'm just like, that's the challenge. I want to find the strawberry flavour in it.
So after that description of what is supposedly, according to Liv, one of the most iconic scenes of the film, when if I ask any person on the street who knows Whiplash, what would you say is an iconic scene of that film? None would say the car crash in a film all about jazz drum solos. But nevertheless, Liv is the ultimate winner. Congratulations.
See, I did think, how could I recreate the scene of throwing a cymbal at someone's head? But I thought that would be too hard, so I went for the other one.
I was thinking about just going with popcorn because he goes to the movies, and I was like, that's shit.
I mean, I would have gone with licorice whiplash, because you can get
Yeah, I had that idea.
Too simple.
I wasn't convinced. Convinced.
It's like the drum cookies. There's just no like other element to it. I'm just imagining the cake aisle. That's why I was thinking in my head is imagining all these like kids cakes, Spider-Man, you know, the unicorn ones, and then just that there, and then everyone like, what is that? Madness as usual. What else do we expect? Not only from an end game, but during this episode, in which of course we're talking about the joy that is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
At the end of the day, there was no earthly way of knowing which direction that cake was going.
No. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. It's been a privilege, and thank you for helping us get Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory into the movie vault this week. Liv, where can we catch yourself? What are you up to?
Okay, yeah, cool. If you want to find me, I'm Livy Mac on Twitter, LIVIMACK. Or Cravania on Letterboxd. KRAVANIA. Hit me on Letterboxd. There we go.
check it out. Lots of crazy films, as you said. At some point, you'll watch that 6-hour sword fighter film, and people will get to see what you've rated it. Kyle, where can we catch yourself?
The best place to find me is on Instagram, and that's kshaun.thomas.
And as you said, you've got a bunch of different things on the way, is it? With the band and the performance, you said, and you've been casting.
Yeah, so theatre stuff, metal stuff, weird stuff. I'm a bit of an enigma.
We'll look forward to your recreation of the boat scene coming up soon, I'm sure. Like, we'll give Kyle one day, like, we'll give him pure imagination. You'll have the solo at the end of your party. We'll give you that moment as you were robbed it from from that production you mentioned.
I can imagine if he redid the boat scene, instead of chopping up chickens, he'd be putting down horses.
Yeah, just imagining like just the horse collapsing, just a woman like, oh!
No, it's just me trying to make your goddamn cake.
Anything lastly from yourself, Craig?
I just have one small thing to say. There's no earthly way of knowing which direction we are going. There's no knowing where we're rowing, or which way the river's flowing. Is it raining? Is it snowing? Is a hurricane a-blowing? Not a speck of light is showing, so the danger must be growing. Are the fires of hell a-glowing? Is the grisly reaper mowing? Yes! The danger must be growing, for the rowers keep on rowing, and they're certainly not showing any signs that they are slowing.
So yeah, you can catch Craig on Letterboxd. I don't know. So
you can catch Craig in your local Tesco screaming at cakes.
You can catch us over on Twitter at WellGoodMovies. You can also catch us on Facebook and Twitter as well, and on our website freshtakehub.com/wellgoodmovies. So please do give us a like, rate us, review us. It helps us to get up in those rankings. And yeah, please do let us know what your feelings are on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. What's your favorite adaptation of it? What are your favorite memories? Were you terrified of the boat scene, or are you more terrified of some of the food ideas that we've had today, including raw pork being transported by drone? If I see that outside my window, I know the apocalypse will have come. So yeah, thank you guys for joining us once again, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Point to car.